like the ones I used to know.
So we've come a long way this year. Everything we've done is sort of led up to these holidays and to be prepared to sort of manage big parties and cook lots of food and make sure it's all really good. And today we're gonna do something really classy, really fit for Christmas. It's a lot to go over. I'm sort of gonna put more than I normally would into one video. Essentially what we're gonna make today is a Chateaubriand, which is the center cut of a beef tenderloin. This is a full beef tenderloin. The Chateaubriand is gonna be the thickest sort of center part of that. You've got small pieces here, so what we're gonna do is trim, and then you save all of this stuff, right? You can make little beef medallions. You could roast this little tail the next day for leftovers. If you get like 1 or 2 of these, it's good. Another thing to note is like this guy costs $63.65, and it's a whole untrimmed beef tenderloin. If you get these at the store, they'll sell these trimmed and then untrimmed. If I got this same piece of meat that was trimmed, it would probably cost at least $100 to $120. So the key to saving a lot of money is getting it untouched and doing the work ourselves, and we're gonna show you how to do that. To go with that, we're gonna do a reduction sauce made of some nice tawny pork. And you wanna make sure you get tawny. Tawny is generally a drier port. Don't really want anything too sweet. So when you go buy this, just ask your guy which of the ports is on the drier side. This is a 10-year-old port, good quality, and for something like this, you sort of want that because we're gonna reduce things down to their essential flavors. So making sure that we have a good quality port to reduce is gonna be important. And we're gonna use this whole thing. You know, this is a more elegant dish. So part of the thing is this whole bottle is going to reduce down to a glaze. And then to make the sauce, we're going to make a beef stock with some beef shanks, some beef bones, some marrow, just sort of scraps that we're going to use to make a quick beef stock. And then we're going to reduce that down and put it all together into a sauce. So there is a lot to do. It's not as complicated as I just made it sound. I'm going to do my best to go through it very simple and very easily, and to kind of ensure that you guys can get a really perfect steak with a really perfect sauce done for Christmas. So let's just get right into it. We got a lot to do. First thing I want to do is I want to get my bones roasting in the oven. Just get those bones in there, just a tiny bit of oil, just to kind of get them going a little bit. Tiny bit of salt. So we're just gonna get this into a 450-degree oven. Cook it for about an hour, flipping it to make sure it browns on all sides. And then after an hour, we're going to put in some aromatics, some carrots and celery and all that kind of stuff. Some tomato paste. Continue to roast it. Make sure they get really nice and dark and caramelized. And then we're gonna throw it into a pot, fill it up with water, start a stock, let it go for like 4 or 5 hours, and then strain it out, start moving on to the other steps. Now this stock process should be done well in advance of Christmas. If you have that stock made ahead of time, this process becomes way easier. We're also gonna be dry brining this. So we need time for all these things to kind of work on their own before we get into the final process. So if you're planning holidays and you have all that stuff going on, just sort of think of this as a couple-day process. And so now we just need to get this guy out of its bag. And you see all this juice in there? That's called the purge. You wanna get this out of this paper without getting this purge everywhere. I'm just gonna kind of cut. By the way, this is a 7-pound beef tenderloin. And then you just want to pat it dry. Get all that stuff off of it. Stuff on top here, it looks crazy. Underneath here is this kind of gem called the center cut, the Chateaubriand. It's very simple. See all this fat? You can just kind of pull that off. There's a few things that are going to happen. You're going to start to expose certain things. You use your hand, you can almost run it along the side, and you notice there's this part called the chain that literally will just pull right off. You just find the seam, use your thumb and expose it. And then like you have this piece that's good, right? You can go in and sort of cut out all the fat. That's all fat. I can add this to the stock. I can clean this up and turn it into like little kebabs or stir fry. Don't throw it out, this is good meat. I'm just gonna throw it into the oven where I threw the bones and try to get this flavor into my stock. Now we're just gonna go through and clean it up. Right here, this is all silver skin. That stuff's not good. It's gonna make this all kind of tough. So basically you just take your knife and kind of go in and expose a little bit of the end and then grab it. Angle your knife upwards and then slice down. As little meat as you can off of there. And do it again. Now right here you have this thing called the petite fillet. And this is actually just like a good snack. So what I'd like to do is remove it. You can keep it on, you can truss it. But that's a nice dinner right there. So you keep that, you roast that the next day, and then just finish cleaning this guy up. Remove any hard fat. That fat's not gonna render down. And then on the back side, you just got some sort of fat there you want to kind of get rid of. You can use the back of the knife to just kind of scrape away any unwanted stuff. So you got these tails, right? A lot of people will flip these tails under. I'm just gonna cut this flat piece off. Again, you can make little medallions for leftovers. This is quality meat. You can make stir fry Asian foods leftovers, so keep that. Cut the tail off, same thing with that. And now I'm left with this nice center cut. And I just want to go under and flip it under 3 times. Not like you would tie your shoes. Do it 3 times and then tie the knot off. And then you essentially take the string, wrap your hand around it, drop the string, right? Now do it again. Wrap it under and then twist. So now you've got it kind of roughly the same shape. Now we just want to just run it through like every other one. Now we've got it all set up. It's tied, Chateaubriand, nice perfect piece. I got a smaller one intentionally because I knew I'm not feeding a crowd today. But you get yourself a nice fat one. Depending on how many people you're gonna feed. This was a 7-pound roast. You still have all of these other pieces. What you could do is take that petite fillet. You can kind of cook this at like medium rare, and then you can cook the petite fillet to a medium well, so you can please everybody who wants kind of differing temperatures. But today I'm just gonna cook this about like a medium rare, medium. Season it with salt, and we're gonna dry brine this. Ideally, you wanna dry brine this the night before. If it's a really fat one, 2 days before. A half a teaspoon of salt per pound of meat, seasoned on all sides. And that's gonna go in the refrigerator uncovered, and that's gonna kind of break down the fibers of the meat, make it more tender, dry out the skin, sort of pull moisture out, and then suck it back in from that salt. So it's gonna season the meat throughout. Like if you just cut a knob of the center of the meat, that piece should taste salty, not just salty from the crust. So we're just gonna season it up on all sides. If you're using table salt, the proportions are gonna go down to a 1/4 teaspoon per pound of meat. Now this is gonna go in the refrigerator. For me, I'm gonna do 4 or 5 hours. I'm gonna let it brine. 1 to 2 days for a big piece of meat is gonna be the best. See, I'm getting some nice color here. So I'm gonna flip everything. I got a bowl of the vegetables. It's carrots, celery, onions, and a head of garlic that's just roughly chopped. What I want to do, pour in tomato paste. Tomato paste is going to add some depth. That's going to really make this stock delicious. So just squeeze like a couple tablespoons, 2 or 3 tablespoons, and then just use your hands. Skins of the onions and all, back in the oven. Everything's nicely browned. Now, I want to get this all into a stock pot. Oh, that's all good stuff. That's like bone marrow and beef fat. I'm gonna keep that. Now we're just gonna deglaze the pan. Pour some water in there. Get a scraper, scrape it all up. Now pour all that goodness straight in. Now then continue to fill it up till you just cover it with cold water. We're gonna add some rosemary and some thyme, a couple bay leaf, and some peppercorn. And just like we did with turkey stock, we want to bring this up to a gentle simmer and then keep it there. We don't want this at a rolling boil. We want sort of gentle bubbles making their way up to the surface, and we want to cook that for at least 4 or 5 hours. You could cook it longer, it's going to be better. As always, whenever you cook something like this, if you cook it for like 2 days, 1 or 2 days on low heat on the back burner of your stove, and just make sure you check on it every now and then, it's okay to leave that going for a day or two. It's just going to concentrate the flavor and make it more tasty and delicious. So I'm gonna shoot for about 5 hours. It gives my beef time to dry brine. When this is done, we're gonna strain it, and then we're going to put it back on the stove, bring it to a boil, and reduce it down even more. And then we're gonna have reduced port and reduced beef stock, and we're gonna bring it all together to make a delicious sauce for our Chateaubriand. So now we get this on the stove. So the stock's been cooking for about 6 hours, and that's good. Like I said, you know this, overnight would be better. So when you have time and you're kind of planning out your schedule, maybe this is something you do a couple days ahead. If you make it in advance, it'll last 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator. Past that, you'll need to freeze it. So we're just going to strain it first, all of the big stuff through here, and then we have this new guy that I got. This is called a China Cap or a chinois. It's a fine mesh strainer, and it's designed for sauces, right? So designed to be able to put stuff in there and then push all that juice out. So that's sort of what we're going to do. I just want to get all the bones and stuff out now. So there's all these bits in there now that I can just squeeze all that good stuff out. And what this will do is it won't push any of that through the strainer. The strainer will kind of catch all of those smaller bits. And then what you're left with is just like this gunk. It's just some fat I want to remove off the top. So now we've got a lot of stock. You probably don't need this much for sauce. So what you could do is cool this down and save half of it. We're just gonna cool this down. When it comes down to room temperature, we're gonna put the lid on and just throw it in the freezer. So that stock probably made 12 cups of stock. I've got about 2 quarts here. A quart is 4 cups. I got my port here, and then I have my stock. A bottle of wine is about 3 1/4 cups. Get it up to a boil, reduce it down to a glaze. When it's at a glaze consistency, like very much like syrup, then I'm going to add this, and then we're gonna reduce that down till that can coat the back of a spoon. And then what we'll do is we'll throw in some butter. We have some herbs that have been kind of simmering in this as well. And then that butter is just gonna tie this sauce together, and that's gonna be the beautiful thing that kind of takes this delicious Chateaubriand to the next level. So now that we have all of this stuff, we can talk about, this guy's been dry brining. And if you can see, it's kind of darkened. The skin is dried up a little bit. I just wanna pat it dry to make sure there's absolutely no excess moisture on there. I'm gonna lightly coat it with oil. And then lots of fresh cracked pepper. Since we dry brined it, it's plenty salty, so we don't need to add any more salt. So now this is just gonna go into the oven. So I've got my Maverick XR50. This is my leave-in thermometer. So I'm gonna find the thickest part, and I'm gonna stick that in. It's about 50 degrees now, so it's almost room temperature. We're gonna throw it in the oven right now. Now the strategy behind the meat is we're gonna get that into the 250 degree oven. It's gonna cook there, and we're gonna monitor the internal temperature. Probably gonna take like 30, 40 minutes for it to get to an internal temperature of 80 degrees. And when we hit that point, we're gonna flip it just so it gets an even cooking all around. Continue cooking it until it reaches an internal temperature of around 115 degrees. At that point, we wanna take it out, and we're gonna get a roaring hot, large kind of wider cast iron pan or any sort of pan that you have that'll fit it. Get it super hot and then sear it on all sides and some of that beef fat. While all that's happening, we're gonna get all of our sauces on the stove. We're gonna start reducing the port all the way down to a glaze, and then we're gonna reduce the stock and then kind of get all of that stuff going at the same time. So we're just gonna move over to the stove and get to work.
Just like the ones I used to know.
So that sauce has such depth. It tastes almost like chocolate. And we didn't put any chocolate in there. That nuttiness from the wine concentrated creates a depth. And then that stock that we cooked all day and continued to reduce down, man. And then we followed some typical sort of rules when roasting. We used a thermometer, so we made sure that we didn't ruin this piece of meat by cooking it wrong. We kept track of all of the temperatures. Melts away in your mouth. For me, this is one of the most foolproof things to serve on Thanksgiving dinner as the main course. Make it a steakhouse meal. Cook it all really fancy. Make it special. Pour your heart into it. Give it love. If there is one time to cook with all the love that you have, it's for holidays when all of your favorite people are there with you. I tell you, when you really care about it and you care about those people and you want to feed them right, it really changes how you cook. Thank you guys so much for watching as usual. Man, that sauce, you really gotta try it. It takes time, obviously, but that's kind of what makes it so good in a restaurant. It just sits there for a long time. Get it started, let it sit there. It's not really doing much. So I urge you to try this. I have the Christmas plan of attack getting put together now. We have sort of almost all the recipes sort of there. I'm gonna let you know, I'm gonna try and get it out for Thursday. So it's all linked up and ready for you guys to download and prepare for the holidays. Christmas is a week from today. The year is almost over. Been fantastic with you guys. Thank you to all my patrons. Much love to all you. That's all that I have. See you next time. Until then, take care, Merry Christmas, and go feed yourself.